I guess my question is, what I was going to ask you that question.
Aim to be good and pray for happiness.
So the question I was going to is pretty much that is, what is a better question for me to ask you if I'm checking in on you? Because we asked that question with good intentions. Are you happy? What's a better question for me to ask Jordan Peterson?
How are you doing?
How are you doing? How are you doing?
Brilliantly and terribly.
We live in a world obsessed with happiness. It's marketed to us, plastered on self-help books, and injected into everyday conversations. Be happy, they say, as if happiness were a golden ticket to a fulfilling life. But happiness isn't the pinnacle of existence. It's fleeting, unpredictable, and frankly, a weak foundation upon which to build a meaningful life. You can no more expect to be happy all the time than you can expect to feel full forever after one meal. The pursuit of happiness is often a shallow goal rooted in the avoidance of deeper truths and challenges. Happiness is often reduced to a mere chemical reaction: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. Each of these neurotransmitters contributes to moments of joy, pleasure, or a sense of well-being. But think about it, these chemicals are fleeting by nature, designed for short bursts to motivate certain behaviors, like eating, bonding, or pursuing a goal. They're not meant to sustain a constant state of bliss. In fact, evolutionary biology suggests that if we were constantly happy, we wouldn't survive.
Needs to be depressed. It needs deep rest from the character that you've been trying to play.
I act because I'm broken in a lot of pieces, and acting gives me a chance to reconfigure those pieces into 1,000 different things that are positive for people to watch.
Discontent is the driving force behind progress, adaptation, and survival. Happiness isn't the human brain's baseline. It's a fleeting bonus for actions that promote survival. The body, like a balanced scale, adjusts to moments of joy and misery to maintain equilibrium. Pursuing happiness as the end goal is as unrealistic as trying to sustain a sprint over a marathon. It's simply not how we're built. Historically, the fixation on happiness is relatively new. Ancient Greek philosophers like Aristotle spoke of eudaimonia, often translated as human flourishing, which emphasizes virtue and purpose over mere pleasure. Happiness was not seen as a constant state, but rather as a byproduct of living rightly. The Stoics, too, emphasized resilience, courage, and integrity as the true path to fulfillment. For them, life wasn't about dodging suffering. It was about confronting it, embracing it, and transforming it into wisdom.
You need an antidote to suffering, and it has to be deep. And deep moves you tectonically, and it's not a trivial thing. But that's better than happiness. And maybe if you're lucky, while you're pursuing that and while you're immersed in it, you get to be happy, and you should fall on your knees and be grateful for that when it happens. It's a gift. It really is a gift. And it comes upon you unexpectedly, your happiness, But you aim to climb uphill to the highest peak you can possibly envision. And that's better than happiness.
This stands in stark contrast to the modern happiness industry, which has commercialized contentment, suggesting that a happy life is one devoid of suffering, sadness, or struggle. Yet history tells us that the most revered figures, Buddha, Jesus Christ, Martin Luther King Jr., even Nelson Mandela, were not happy in the conventional sense. Their lives were marked by immense suffering, sacrifice, and existential struggle. Their pursuit was not for happiness but for a higher purpose, often requiring them to walk through the fires of pain and discomfort. Biologically, humans are designed for adaptation, not for sustained happiness. Our nervous system, equipped with the fight or flight response, is geared towards survival, not constant joy. A person solely focused on happiness is biologically ill-equipped to handle adversity. Consider the metaphor of the oak tree. Its strength comes from being exposed to harsh winds, storms, and changing seasons. It grows stronger precisely because of the struggle. Similarly, Humans must engage with life's adversities, learn from them, and grow more resilient. The biological underpinnings of happiness also indicate that it's more of a transient state than a permanent one. Even evolutionary psychology suggests that our ancestors were more focused on ensuring survival than finding perpetual joy. The tribes that prioritized strength, cooperation, and resourcefulness over pleasure were the ones that thrived. Psychologically, the single-minded pursuit of happiness can lead to emptiness, as happiness in its rawest form is tied to gratification. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, argued that the quest for meaning, not happiness, is what truly sustains us. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl observed that those who survived the horrors of concentration camps were not necessarily the happiest individuals, but those who found purpose in their suffering. This underscores the critical point. Meaning can sustain you when happiness cannot. When happiness becomes the goal, we often find ourselves running from suffering rather than facing it. But it's through struggle and overcoming adversity that we build character and resilience.
I woke up and I suddenly got it. I understood suddenly how thought was just an illusory thing, and how thought is responsible for, if not all, most of the suffering we experience. And then I suddenly felt like I was looking at these thoughts from another perspective, and I wondered, who is it that's aware that I'm thinking? And suddenly I was thrown into this expansive, amazing feeling of freedom from myself, from my problems.
Nietzsche's phrase, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," isn't about seeking pain, but understanding that growth often emerges from hardship, not happiness. Imagine happiness as a mirage in the desert. You can see it, shimmering in the distance, always promising relief. But every time you get closer, it recedes. The closer you think you are to achieving it, the further away it seems. The desert represents life filled with trials and unexpected challenges. The pursuit of happiness alone will leave you thirsty, wandering aimlessly without a true sense of direction. Instead of happiness, aim for purpose, an oasis with deep wells of meaning. Purpose is not as shiny as happiness, nor as instantly gratifying, but it's substantial. It's the kind of fulfillment that endures the scorching heat of the desert, offering real sustenance when the illusion of happiness disappears. Aristotle argued that true happiness isn't a constant state of joy, but the result of a life lived in accordance with virtue. This philosophical view emphasizes the importance of moral character and ethical behavior over the pursuit of momentary pleasure. Meanwhile, modern psychology aligns with this concept. Studies show that people who focus on meaningful goals, such as building strong relationships, contributing to society, or pursuing personal growth, report higher life satisfaction than those chasing happiness alone. It's a paradox. The more you chase happiness, the more elusive it becomes. Happiness as a side effect of meaning, however, is sustainable. When people dedicate themselves to a cause, a passion, or the well-being of others, happiness often follows as a byproduct, not as the primary goal. Neurologically, the concept of hedonic adaptation comes into play. Our brains are wired to return to a baseline level of happiness no matter what external events occur. It's why winning the lottery only brings temporary elation, while loss only brings temporary sorrow. The brain resets, making it clear that happiness is designed to be temporary, a signal, not a constant state. The pursuit of happiness alone is akin to chasing a moving target, one that our very biology is set up to evade. Our dopamine system, for instance, is designed to reward progress, not arrival. Once we achieve a goal, the brain resets the goalposts, urging us to keep moving. It's a survival mechanism that keeps us striving, growing, and adapting to the ever-changing landscape of life. To lead a meaningful life, we must redefine our goals. Instead of asking, "How can I be happy?" we should ask, "What is worth the suffering?" In other words, what goals, values, or aspirations are meaningful enough that you are willing to endure hardship for them? A person who seeks only happiness is like a ship without a compass, swayed by the currents of desire and dissatisfaction. Focusing solely on happiness is to neglect the real, messy, and often painful aspects of life that ultimately make it worth living. It's through confronting fears, facing discomfort, and pushing through obstacles that we find deeper fulfillment. Happiness should be seen as a byproduct, not as a goal. It is the outcome of a well-lived life, filled with challenges, meaning, and purpose. In the end, it's not about avoiding pain, but embracing it as a fundamental aspect of growth. The pursuit of happiness, when not rooted in something deeper, will inevitably lead to disillusionment. In essence, stop chasing happiness. Instead, strive for a life of meaning, rich with challenges, moral goals, and a deep sense of purpose. Happiness may come and go, but meaning endures. As Frankl famously said, those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Let your why be your guide, not the fickle pursuit of constant joy. If this narrative resonated with you, do support us. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe. Thank you for staying with us to the end. See you in the next video on Plaid Chronicles.